Alright, this is a video on the questions I seem to get asked most, which is, what is multiplayer Keyforge? Well, first off, multiplayer Keyforge is a normal game of Keyforge. It's going to be the first player to get 3 keys is going to be the winner of the game. The only difference is you have 2 opponents that are trying to both win the game themselves or stop you from winning the game. So, there are certain rules that are going to be changed to make for a good multiplayer Keyforge game. The first rule is the starting hand sizes for each player is actually going to be 6. There's no 7 cards for the player that goes first. And for the player that goes first, there's no restrictions on the amount of cards you can play. So normally in Keyforge, you have to only play 1 card if you go first or discard 1 card. Well, it's too big of a disadvantage if you always have to do that going first, because now suddenly you have 2 other players that get to play as many cards as they like. The rest of the rules for multiplayer Keyforge are specifically on how cards will interact with both your opponents and the cards that they play. Actions, play effects, and destroyed effects that mess with your opponents will only affect the opponent that you choose. Cards that say enemy creatures can affect both opponents' creatures, and anytime a card does something to a neighbor, it has to be the same exact player. Cards with a constant effect that say opponent will actually affect both players. These rules will definitely change how valuable certain cards are in the game of Keyforge. Meaning some decks you thought may have been completely unusable will suddenly become an important part of your multiplayer arsenal. So let's kind of go over some examples of cards and how they are played or how multiplayer might change the way they're played. First ones we're going to talk about here, we have Charette, Champion Tabris. So whenever Tabris fights, it captures an amber. Pretty simple. Each time you fight with her, you're going to choose an opponent to capture an amber from. Charette, whenever you play her, you capture 3 amber. So this, you have to choose 1 opponent to capture 3 amber from. Obviously, if they have less, you capture as many as you can. Now, what's interesting about captured amber in Keyforge is if one of your opponents, whoever it is, you never have to keep track of who is the one that captured amber from. Whichever opponent makes one of these cards leave play will be the opponent that actually gets back the amber. So you might take it from player 2, and suddenly player 1 kills Charette, and they're going to get that amber. So these cards kind of become like a higher risk, but they're still important for controlling the flow of the game. Being able to prevent someone from making a key is pretty nice. The other thing that happens is, let's say you are the person that destroys this. Let's say I got Charette out, and I play Gateway to Dis, and I have my own Charette out there. Since I'm the player that destroyed my own creature that has captured amber on it, I get to choose which of my opponents I want the amber to go to. Now, these are cards that will affect only 1 player. So here's Tremor, stun a creature and each of its neighbors. So it goes with the rule of you choose a creature on an opponent's side, and then each of their neighbors. It can't be another creature that is controlled by another player. Grenade Snib. This is an example of whenever it's destroyed, you choose an opponent to lose 2 amber. Unguarded Camp. So this is for each creature you have in excess of your opponent, a friendly creature captures an amber. So it's important to note that because each creature is capturing an amber, I can go back and forth between the players if I like. This is a cool way to be able to capture amber from both. The Flame Fist here says whenever you play it, if your opponent has 7 or more amber, they lose 2. This is also something, even if we have 2 opponents that have 7 or more amber, we only choose 1 of them to lose 2. It's going to go same with Burn the Stockpile. Yixel Marauder. This is also, you're going to choose, you capture 1 amber for each friendly Mars creature. Since it's not each friendly Mars creature capturing an amber, it can only be from 1 opponent. Something like Irradiated Amber. If your opponent has 6 or more, deal 3 damage to each enemy creature. So in this case, you're choosing whichever opponent has 6 or more amber to be able to use this effect. Ghostly Hand. Once again, just a single opponent. If they have 1, you get to steal it. You can't all of a sudden abuse it and take 2 because each of your opponents has 1 amber. Bait and Switch, this is another important one. Just if you choose 1 opponent that you want to bait and switch with. Now we're into different style cards like Fogify. So whenever you play it, your opponent cannot use creatures to fight on the next turn. This is a card because it's an action, it's a one-time use. You have to choose which opponent you want to hit this with. Same with Scrambler Storm, but it's for action cards. The Graftier, same deal. So I think you're getting the theme here. anytime you have a play effect, an action, or like a single destroyed effect, it's only going to affect one player. Same with this. Dr. Escatora. Gain 1 amber for each forged key your opponent has. It's one opponent. Here's the neighbor effect, where it has to be one player that this hits. Flaxia is actually really good in this sort of multiplayer game because since you have multiple opponents, this is going to happen more often where you get to gain 2 amber. Control the Weak. Once again, it's a play effect. Only one of your opponents will have to choose a house. As good as this card is in 1 versus 1, this is the card that, it starts to get a little bit weaker whenever it's just, hitting one of your opponents. But it's still a good card because if you have one opponent that's running away with the game, this will help try and keep them in check. The Terror, same with Flaxia, just more often for you to be able to actually use this play effect, because if one opponent has no amber, you gain 2. Drumble, one opponent 7 or more, you get to capture all of it. Gatekeeper, sort of the same thing. And Lash Your Broken Dreams, I figured I would point this one out simply because it is something that stays on the board, but you have to use an action. So since you're using an action, which is a one-time effect, this keys cost 3 more during your opponent's turn, only affects one player that you choose. Now we have things that can hit, it's not just one opponent. And you're going to see it with cards that say enemy creature. So loot the bodies. For the remainder of the turn, gain 1 amber each time an enemy creature is destroyed. So if you play this with any sort of big destroy effect and you're knocking out a whole bunch of enemy creatures, doesn't matter which opponent it is, you're actually going to get amber for each one of those creatures that's destroyed. Same deal, Looter Goblin, just on a body with a reap effect. War Chest, same way, it's just with fighting. Just giving you guys a bunch of examples. If you have questions, feel free to leave a comment. I will try and answer every single question I can. Alright, so Pawn Sacrifice. Whenever you sacrifice a friendly creature, you deal 3 damage each to 2 creatures. It doesn't have to be to a single opponent. This can hit a creature on opponent 2 and opponent 1. Lights Out, return 2 enemy creatures. Once again, since it says enemy creatures, it can be any opponent. Bouncing Death Quark. This is interesting because you destroy an enemy creature and a friendly creature. Repeat this effect as many times as you like, as long as you repeat the entire effect. So whenever you play this, I can choose opponent 2. And then, for the second time it happens, I can actually choose the other opponent. I can keep going back and forth, or the same opponent as many times as I like with the Bouncing Death Quark. Okay, now this is interesting because there are some cards that actually say each player. So this is a card that is actually hitting all players, because it actually specifically reads each player loses half of their amber, round down. So this is actually a card that becomes more powerful in a multiplayer game because it's hitting more people. And obviously the only time you're going to play a card like this is whenever you're getting maximum value out of it. So that's actually a very sweet card for multiplayer. This is another one, 2 damage to a creature, and then 2 damage to a different creature. Since it's not neighbor, you can hit any of your opponents you like. Same with Cooperative Hunting, same sort of style, and same with Nocturnal Maneuver. You can exhaust creatures on both of your opponent's sides. Now, this last pile I have here, this is a pile of cards that are actually just really good or have enhanced value in multiplayer, and also some that I just want to discuss because of multiplayer. So, Shackles. Now we're to constant effects. So this is, at the end of your turn, your opponent loses 1. It does say your opponent. And if this was just an action, a reap effect, something along those lines, or a play effect, it would only be one player, one opponent, right? But because this card is sitting on the board and it says this the whole time, this is actually making at the end of each of our opponent's turn, they're each going to lose 1 amber. So that is an awesome card for multiplayer. Tentakiss, same thing. Your opponent must pay you 1 amber in order to use an artifact. This is just a constant effect. There's nothing that's causing this to happen one time. So both of our opponents, anytime they use an artifact, bam, that's an amber straight to us. Succubus. This card becomes super awesome too, especially if you have a deck that maybe has 2 or 3 of these. Man. Okay, during their draw card step, your opponent refills their hand to 1 less card. This is another card. It's affecting both of our opponents. This is super good. Now this you're going to find really interesting because it's one of the few cards that actually breaks the rule of play effect, because this effect always happens until he leaves play. So this is one where there's like a real special ruling for it. Restringentis. It says play, choose a house. Your opponent cannot choose that house as their active house until he leaves play. Now, because it's an effect that is always happening until he leaves play, this means when you choose a house, it's actually going to affect both of your opponents. So if it just so happens both of your opponents are playing Brobnar, and you play Restringus, and you say Brobnar, both of your opponents cannot choose Brobnar. They're going to have to find a different way to get this guy out of play. You know, it seems completely, whoa, that's unbalanced, that's insane, what is going on? But you got to realize you have two opponents that are going to be fighting to get rid of this guy, okay? So it is powerful, but when this guy hits play and you're hurting two players, trust me, they're going to take care of it. Cleansing Wave. This is just a super powerful card for multiplayer. So you heal 1 damage from each creature, gain an amber for each creature healed this way? What? So if you got an average of, let's say, 3 to 5 creatures out for each player, and a decent amount of them have damage on it, that is a huge amber gain. This is a pretty good card in 1v1, but this card becomes absolutely bonkers when it comes to multiplayer. Blinding Light. This is an action card. I said before, whenever it's doing it to an opponent, you have to choose one. Well, this isn't choosing an opponent. This is saying choose a house. So that means it will affect every player. As long as they have that house, it's going to stun those creatures. Martian Hounds, kind of like the Cleansing Wave, is just a really super powerful card in multiplayer because it's for each damaged creature, then this effect happens. And just as an example of something that gets better, Red Planet Ray Gun. Choose a creature, deals 1 damage to a creature for each Mars creature in play whenever it reaps. I'm just pointing out there are some cards that get really good because of how many more houses are involved, how many houses can be duplicated amongst the players. So it kind of adds a little bit of value to a card even like Red Planet Ray Gun, which is a good card to begin with. So I really hope that does clarify some of the multiplayer rules and questions that you guys might have involving multiplayer. We're definitely still going to be shooting a video at some point. I just got to get all the little kinks worked out. But yeah, I really think multiplayer is awesome. The game wasn't necessarily designed for it, but with these minor rule modifications, it is really, really good. We have a blast. It is fun watching, one guy gets ahead and it's like, all right, now the other 2 players ganging up on him. We got to stop this guy from winning the game while they're still fighting to try and get ahead themselves. I would really encourage you to try multiplayer. Leave a comment down below if you try multiplayer and you think it's awesome too, and I'll see you guys next time.